All right, hello and welcome to the 2022 UAF Arctic Innovation Competition presented by UCibelli Coal Mine. My name is Ashley Plies and I am a UAF College of Business and Security Management student studying accounting as well as a member of the AIC staff. I am so excited to be your MC this evening as I bring AIC straight to you at home. We really appreciate all of the creative ideas that are submitted to AIC, but after a round of preliminary screening, only 10 submissions make it to the semifinals for the main division for ages 18 and over. You will hear 5 of those ideas tonight, and they are all competing for cash prizes up to $10,000. So this is a little bit of a big deal. We have an expert panel of judges joining us tonight, of course. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Jack Wilbur, the 2022 Main Division Judges Chair from Design Alaska, John Bittner of Alaska Small Business Development Center, Jim Cully representing Mount McKinley Bank, Reggie Dallaire from Respec and an AIC 2014 AIC Arctic Kicker winner, Brian Holst, all the way from the Juneau Economic Development Council, Kathleen Hook, representing Doyon Utilities, Melanie Lucas Conwell from the 49th State Angel Fund, and Justin Seavey, representing our presenting sponsor, UCibelli Coal Mine, and a UAF MBA graduate. Thank you, judges. The Arctic Innovation Competition awards over $40,000 in cash prizes and award. This cannot happen without the generous support of many sponsors. We want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, UCibelli Coal Mine. emceeing the award ceremony on Saturday will be Lisa Herbert, the Vice President of Public Relations at UCibelli Coal Mine and the Executive Director of the UCibelli Foundation. So for that exciting event, tune in at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Founding sponsors have supported AIC and our mission of innovation and economic development since 2009. That list includes AEDC, Design Alaska, Doyon Limited, FEDC, Kinross Fort Knox, JEDC, and Northrim Bank. And as AIC has grown, so has our sponsorship, including Alaska SBDC, GCI, SAS Design, and Alaska NSF EPSCoR. Supporting the Cub and Junior divisions is Alaska 529. They provide 7 education-free savings plans at $2,000 each. And new to this year is the Classroom of the Future Award, which will be announced Saturday, going to a K-12 teacher who incorporates AIC in the classroom. Additional side prizes are supported by the Educational Legacy Fund, Alaska NSF EPSCoR, Mount McKinley Bank, and Respec. More details will be highlighted a little later in the program. But for now, let me share how you can vote for your fan favorite. Voting offers you a chance to select your favorite idea in each division. Recipients will receive $100 and an amazing, unique Lego trophy. All thanks to Chris Merrock, Allstate, for sponsoring this award. Cast your votes before midnight on Thursday. And without further ado, let's get started with presentations. Just a reminder that each competitor has 5 minutes to present their ideas, followed by 5 minutes of questions from the judges panel. As well, just a reminder, judges, I have just posted the judges' order in the chat. So up first is Doug and Maxwell Franklin presenting the Airborne Disease Dosimeter. Let me know when you guys are ready, and we'll start the timer as soon as you're ready.
All right, well, let's do it. Hi, I'm Doug Franklin, co-founder and CEO of AirHouse. I'm here tonight with my co-founder and CTO, Max Franklin. Our Airborne Disease Dosimeter enables you to make informed decisions about your risk of exposure to... is this a do-over? I get multiple things. Okay, so let's do this over from the top because my video is going in and out, if you don't mind. Hi, I'm Doug Franklin. I'm co-founder and CEO of Airhounds. I'm here tonight with my co-founder and CTO, Max Franklin. Our airborne disease dosimeter enables you to make informed decisions about your risk of exposure to airborne diseases like COVID-19. The Airhounds story, next, please. The Airhound story began 20 years ago when my daughter Hannah was badly injured by a chlorine gas release in a swimming pool. Hannah survived, but her lungs were scarred, which makes her vulnerable to airborne diseases like COVID-19. Unfortunately, Hannah is not alone. About 5% of the population is medically vulnerable to severe infection. Another 7% are young children who cannot be vaccinated. And 36% say the pandemic is having a serious impact on their mental health. People want COVID-19 to be over, but it's not over yet for 48% of the population. That's a lot of people who have a problem with no obvious solution. Next, please. As we see it, the big problem is that airborne disease is invisible. You can't see it, smell it, or taste it. It would be a whole different story if we could see airborne disease floating around like a red fog. If you could see viruses, you could avoid them. As it is, there's no way to tell if you're being exposed or not. You're flying blind, you're making decisions with little or no data. And as a result, especially if you're part of that 36%, you're living in a state of constant anxiety. Next, please. At Airhounds, we believe the solution is to make the invisible fog of airborne disease visible. Our product measures CO2 as a proxy for the aerosols we exhale that can carry diseases like COVID-19, influenza, measles, and so forth. Our mobile app uses the level of CO2 around you to calculate a risk score in real time. The risk is presented as a simple stoplight. Green is go, red is no. Behind the stoplight is a scientific model developed at the University of Colorado. The model takes into account activity level, immunity rates, and community spread. Once you know whether or not the air you're breathing is safe, you can put your anxiety to rest. Green is good, enjoy yourself. Yellow means you should take precautions like opening a window or wearing a mask. And if you're in the red, you should probably go somewhere else that has better ventilation. Next, please. So how does it all work? It's simple. Just wear it, pair it, and share it. To get the CO2 level, we're developing a small wearable sensor. The sensor uses Bluetooth to talk to our mobile app. The app calculates a risk score and sends measurements to a shared map. The map makes it easy for everyone to see air quality measurements. It's like Yelp for indoor air quality. Next, please. Airhounds has a simple revenue model that leans on hardware sales. Our smallest wearable sensor without a display will cost $150. A larger wearable with a display will be $250. The app is free with potential for in-app purchases. The shared map is also free, but has potential to attract advertising. And the data behind the map could become quite valuable. Next. Here's a quick look at our market. I mentioned earlier that 36% of US adults say the pandemic is affecting their mental health. That's 92 million people. At 150 per wearable, that's a market worth $13.8 billion. Next, please. We've built the minimum viable product of our mobile app. The iOS version of the app is currently under review by the Apple Store, and the Android version has been submitted to Google for review. The app pairs with readily available AirNet 4 sensors so people can use it just as soon as it's released. Meanwhile, we're working on a proof of concept of our wearable. As you can see by the components beneath the AirNet 4, it'll be quite a bit smaller. The shared map is in development. It should be published by the summer. Next, please. Here's the team. I'm Doug Franklin. I'm an MIT graduate with 30 years of experience designing, implementing, and operating complex systems. I've built X-ray telescopes for MIT, designed supercomputer motherboards, and architected document management systems for Alaska's largest oil companies. Prior to leaving my day job at GCI to focus on Airhounds, I was senior IT manager leading a group of talented DevOps engineers. Max Franklin is a software engineer at GCI, where he has served as product owner and scrum master, mentoring a team of software engineers. Max is proficient in more than a dozen languages and frameworks. As an adjunct professor at the University of Alaska, he has taught complex systems analysis and agent-based modeling in life sciences. Next, please. With the airborne disease dosimeter, your risk level is low. Just wear it, pair it, and share it. Thanks for your attention. Any questions?
Wonderful team. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to throw it right to our judges for questions, starting with Jack, then going to John and Jim. So Jack, why don't you take it away?
So I understand the basic concept. You're measuring CO2, assuming that high CO2 levels have high potential for contacting the virus or whatever is in the air.
True.
But doesn't Also the number of people in the space. I mean, the number of people in the space would increase the CO2 level. But that those people aren't necessarily infected and therefore spreading the disease. So how do you compensate for that?
Push that over to Max, who is our whiz on this.
Yeah, that's incorporated via community spreads parameter. So the greater community spread you have, the higher risk there is in the app. The less community spread, the lower the risk.
See, thank you.
Hi, great presentation. It was very, very sharp and to the point. I liked it. One of the questions I had is I didn't see a lot of talk about who else is in the market, how novel is the technology, right? I mean, how replicable is this? If somebody says, wow, this is a good idea, how much of this is going to be easily replicable by a competitor? And basically just talk to me a little bit more about sort of where you see yourself in the market and how you compete. And I saw the part where you said, all right, there's X percentage of overall people in the population. And if all of them bought $150 device, it's a X $billion market. Realistically, are you targeting, I mean, I'm assuming you're targeting a much smaller subset of that, right? You usually don't go with like the
right.
whole...
That's our TAM, right? For sure.
Right.
So let me try to take it from the competition, and you might have to remind me along the way down. But from the competition angle, one of the questions we get all the time is how come nobody else is doing this? And I think it relates to your question because this model that we're leveraging was only released to the general public almost exactly 1 year ago. So it's quite new, and competition really hasn't latched onto it yet. So what you do see in the space is you see a fair number of companies who produce carbon dioxide monitors of some sort. Most of them will indicate some sort of chemical toxicity threshold. I mean, if you're up over 5,000 parts per million, that's the OSHA personal exposure limit. So, they'll try to give you some feedback in regards to what CO2 itself will do, but they don't talk about how it correlates with aerosol sols and hence airborne disease, right? Also, they all come from pre-pandemic production values. And so the favorite of a lot, this AeroNet here, was designed for greenhouses. It's not really, I mean, it's portable, right? It's like the old Osborne computer or something. You can lug it around, but it's not really like, a laptop or a phone or anything, right? It's quite bulky. So all the competition is in those modes. None of them have a public map as yet of indoor spaces. But that said, to the secret sauce part of the question of, what's our protection against others? Really, it's that we're at the head of the pack. And I think there's an ongoing assumption that, COVID will be over and there's not much reason in investing in it at present. Not bearing out so far, but that's my speculation. And I missed something. What was the next one?
No, that's all right. I want to make sure that the last judge has time to ask their question. The only thing I just want to know is, all right, let's say that magically tomorrow, and I don't think this is reasonable, but let's say tomorrow COVID-19 is no longer a thing. Like it just up and poof, and somebody finds a genie and it goes away.
Yeah.
Are you able to pivot this? And do you think there's still a market for this product beyond COVID-19 into some other, to whatever the next horrible thing we have to suffer through for the 3-year future or whatever?
We're big into slogans. And so our slogan for this question is clean indoor air is the next clean drinking water. So we're pretty sure that this has some durability in the sense that other airborne diseases, influenza, measles, tuberculosis, whatever is around the corner, they all work the same way. They're all transmitted in a similar way, and we can just parameterize that in the app so that, and in fact, we're working on a generic disease calculator where you can just pick which one are you concerned about, right? And it'll grab the community spread and show it what it is. So yeah, we think there's some durability.
Quick question. So what kind of penetration do you need to actually make this a viable thing? So obviously you don't want to wear this thing, walk through whatever it was, have it measure, and then get stuck, already breathe that. You want to see something on a map and go, hey, I don't want to go in there. How many people do you need to have this so that it makes it worthwhile?
That is a great question. And I don't I don't really have a means to quantify that. I imagine scan parties where we would go to Seattle and crowdsource, scanning, all the bars and restaurants kind of thing, right? So there's at least a representative data point. But I think you need that kind of coverage, right? You need at least the popular establishments to have some data around them. And that penetration could be accomplished outside of the actual customer base by having a crowdsourced event for any given community. But it's a valid question and not easy.
Perfect. Thank you, judges, for your questions, and Doug and Max for your answers. That was great. We'll move on to our second presenter, which is Amy Swanson and Cody Birkland, explaining the idea Ultropia. And just a reminder, judges, I am putting your next round of question and answering into the chat box. All right, team, are you able to see your slides?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, just say when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready. Hi, I'm Cody, co-founder of Ultropia, an engineering master's student researching ultrasound at the University of Washington. At Ultropia, we're creating the first all-in-one ultrasonic washer and dryer. By using targeted vibrations, our research shows 20-minute cycles with less water use and 5 times less total energy compared to a modern mid-market washing machine. Our compact combo washer dryer is a third of the size, opening up opportunities for homes that cannot support laundry appliances. Ultropia's mission is to foster global accessibility to clean laundry processes, since hygiene is a basic human right. There are 5 billion people who still wash clothes by hand. The US is one of a handful of countries where washers and dryers are standard issue. Even diehard environmentalists don't give up their machines. The problem is our current appliances. They're resource hungry and highly polluting. US washers and dryers produce 179 million metric tons of CO2 annually. That takes half the trees in the US to keep up with. As the world adopts our standard of living, laundry appliance emissions could rise to 1 billion tons annually. The planet cannot keep up with the demand. Energy costs are a big barrier for many people. Christy, a local preschool teacher here in Seattle, who grew up in Nicaragua, washed clothes by hand on a washboard. She visited home in 2016 to see that her family had bought a washing machine, but rarely used it due to energy costs. Our advisor, Dr. Nathy, comes from South Africa, where water scarcity prevented machines from being practical. The average load takes 19 gallons of drinking water. Around the world, 1 in 6 healthcare facilities lack basic hygiene services. Clean linens are essential to their work, especially in areas where access to disposable medical products is limited. Next, please. Our solution uses ultrasound technology to wash as well as dry clothes, enabling an efficient, compact product that is affordable to purchase and ship. We have a feasibility prototype here. Next, please. Cleaning works by using ultrasound to drive the creation of cavitation in water, where vacuum bubbles undergo a controlled collapse that expels dirt out of clothing. The drying process uses ultrasound to atomize water droplets, dramatically reducing the heat required. We plan to further our research to reuse water in the system since the droplets are easier to distill. Next, please. We've compared our ultrasonic cleaning to conventional washing machines. As you can see, the results are fairly similar. The real difference is in the resources used. Our bench tests for washing show faster cleaning, less water use, and significantly less total energy compared to a modern mid-market washing machine. For drying, we're building on research from the Department of Energy and Oak Ridge National Labs, which shows drying in 7.5 minutes with 5 times efficiency gains over forced-air dryers. Next, please. The technology uses fewer moving parts, enabling our design to last longer. It also allows us to create a compact, all-in-one unit that will be more affordable to manufacture and ship. High efficiency allows for a configurable water supply and compatibility with a standard wall outlet to foster accessibility for resource-scarce communities. Next, please. Next, please. Oh, thank you. We're challenging GE and Samsung with our all-in-one product that is a third of the size and moves beyond the expensive damaging rotary drum. Other ultrasonic cleaners are on the market, but our product is unique, using ultrasound to wash as well as dry clothing, saving water, energy, and time. Next, please. We're opening up new markets, starting with providing access for the millions of Americans across all income levels who do not have in-home laundry. Globally, the market is big, $66 billion, growing by 34% over 5 years. We're pushing to meet this surge in demand to prevent the resulting increase in pollution. Next, please. Hardware has high initial costs. The Ultramatic will need to start in the luxury space to be financially viable until manufacturing costs come down as we scale. We are partnering with Signature Yachts and Zephyr RVs to build machines for their vehicles, and they're willing to pay the high initial cost of around $2,000 per machine. As we scale, our costs will come down significantly to a few $100s. We can be more affordable than traditional dryers due to our all-in-one design and simple ceramic devices. Our machine will be more affordable and environmentally friendly to manufacture and to ship. Next, please. In building this company, we've grown a diverse team. Amy and I are engineering co-founders who developed this technology together. We met leading our student branch of IEEE, where we built a reputation for planning engineering projects, getting funding, and following through. We met Lloyd Dees through his work leading entrepreneurship programs. He is now a master's in entrepreneurship student at the Foster School of Business, specializing in technology commercialization. We're a tight-knit team dedicated to making this technology accessible to everyone. Commercializing this technology can change so many lives. Laundry appliances are considered essential infrastructure in the developed world, but the current processes are simply not sustainable. Changing the way we do laundry will make sanitation a part of the energy transition and enable a global standard of living we all want to share.
Perfect. Thank you, Cody. We will move right into questions, starting with Reggie, then moving to Brian and Kathleen. Take it away, Reggie.
So did I see a slide there where you said that there are already ultrasonic washing machines out there in production?
Yeah, so Dolphy and Sonic Soak both make small handheld portable travel units that are used for washing inside of like a wash basin, like a sink. So they market it as a travel unit. The field is a lot smaller and they're doing something quite a bit different. The washing technology is similar, but it's not what we're doing.
And I guess one thing I didn't see was like an actual the unit. I saw like a bunch of electronics, like a circuit board type thing, but I didn't see like what you're putting the clothes in.
Yeah, so the scale prototype we've used for fabric samples and like COVID masks and that type of thing. There's about a 1 liter glass chamber on that.
Okay.
So yeah, we're just working on scaling it up for the RV customers now.
Our goal is to be the first ultrasonic washer and dryer on the market.
Yeah, that's where a lot of our IP exists around.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Is Brian available?
If not,
sure.
we'll move right to Kathleen then.
All right. Nice presentation. Where did you guys get this idea? Why were you inspired for this?
Originally, we started with a much larger vision. I didn't want to fold laundry anymore, and I wanted to completely automate the process from start to finish. But we went through the NSF I-Corps program and interviewed a lot of people. We interviewed people in Alaska who use washaterias, who simply don't have the energy requirements that they need to wash and dry their clothing. We talked to people in Vietnam who like bugs lay eggs in their clothing. We talked to people in South Africa who don't have the water needs. We talked to students in dorms who don't have access to washers and dryers. There's 25 million Americans who don't have access to washers and dryers. So it is a problem in our community as well as just all over the world. And so we saw this major need and decided this is the product that we needed to make.
Yeah, and we're both researchers at the UW's Applied Physics Lab, their Center for Industrial and Medical Ultrasound. So we were just eager to apply ultrasound in a way that could, impact this problem. And both of us in our undergrad as, students who lived in dorms and, and all our friends in that environment, it's just such a pain. But to realize that there's people out there that would consider, going to a laundromat as a complete luxury.
Mm-hmm. So kind of just to follow on Reggie. So is there, when you talked about the bench scale testing, what was that unit then that you did the bench tails?
That unit was our.
Yeah, that was what was pictured.
Yes, that was.
Oh, it was.
Yes, and so
got it. And so eventually, how big do you see this unit to be?
And the beauty of it is that it can be any size. It will just scale with the transducers. So because we're moving away from the rotary drum shape, And it's just these solid ceramics that are more durable, no belts, no moving parts. It could be a drawer in your home. It could be a bag that tucks away. It could be, right now we're picturing it as maybe a small refrigerator that kind of opens and hangers come out. And so that's what we're testing with users and seeing maybe like this. And so we're trying different things and see what people like.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. I didn't quite get that. Reggie, do you have anything else?
I think it's pretty neat. I'm just thinking if there's any way that you like, it doesn't use much electricity, right? And so you could probably use it, off a solar panel with battery bank, something like that. But it's the water thing, right? And so you still require some water, which means you still need fresh, clean water to put in it. You still need to drain the water out. And boy, if there was some way to do it without water, or to filter that water and reuse it over and over and over, and then once a year you had to change the water out or something like that.
And that is part of what we are developing now. And so that's our goal with our research, and something that we are probably going to partner with the National Science Foundation to do more research into. And there's a company that we can partner with as well, who has created an electrode that can purify water, eliminates all the microplastics, and can completely reuse the water in our system. It would add $300 to our product cost, but then we will also further research, since ultrasound already turns the water into tiny little droplets. It wouldn't take too much more just to distill that water and reuse it into the system. So there's two paths, and we do plan to reuse water. Our current system doesn't, but that is what we would like to research.
Yeah, we're just trying to hit the market as quickly as possible with a minimum product, and then add those features as we scale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, judges, and thank you, team. All right. Right now, we'll move into our Kicker sponsor spotlight. Kickers are $2,000 prize incentives, which are awarded to any submission in the top 10 for distinguished categories, regardless of placement. The first I'd like to highlight is the Arctic Kicker, sponsored by Respect. Although AIC submissions do not have to be Arctic related, they often are because of the geographic climate in Alaska. This kicker recognizes an innovation that makes living in the Arctic easier. The next clicker is close to home for me, the Alaska College Student Kicker, which is sponsored by Mount McKinley Bank. This kicker is given to the best idea submitted from any currently enrolled college student at an Alaska-based college. Although none of the student ideas have made it to the top 10, this means next year, Mount McKinley Bank will likely double their prize. So that's very exciting for college students like me. Thank you, Respect, and Mount McKinley Bank for your support of innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit. Next up will be Cecil Ellsworth explaining the idea hydroslats. And right before you start, I am putting the judge list in the chat box, starting off with Melanie, Justin, and Jack. All right, Cecil, can you see your slides?
Thank you, Ashley. I can.
Perfect. The stage is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Throughout history, whenever problems arose, someone would come up with a solution. If it worked well enough, over time it was adopted and often just became the way things are done, which usually meant it was rarely re-examined. That's the way it's been in hydroponics for more than 100 years. People started growing plants in tubes of various shapes and sizes. And they use tubes mostly because, well, you can buy pre-made tubes at the store, and we already know that tubes hold water. And if you get big ones, they have enough space in them to put some soil in for plant roots. Until now, as far as I can tell, no one has really thought to question the necessity of a tube and all the space they waste. Slide. I call my solution to that wasted space hydroslats. In the amount of space vertical tubes require to grow 57 plants, hydroslats can grow 600 by getting rid of that fixed tube structure. Hello, my name is Cecil Ellsworth. I'm a farmer and a businessman from Wasilla, Alaska. Slide. In a space roughly the size of a football field, a hydroponic hydroslats facility can produce more than 18,000 heads of lettuce per day and have more than 547,000 plants growing at the same time. More than a dozen different crops, from lettuce to herbs to strawberries, can be grown in hydroslats. Whether you're growing veggies in a village connex or a huge food factory, energy is by far the biggest monthly expense in indoor hydroponics. Slide. A hydroponic company called Plenty Farms has a $200 million state-of-the-art facility in which they get approximately 3 rows of their plant tubes per light fixture. Hydroslats can get as many as 24 rows per fixture in the flat array for the first 3 weeks. That's an 8 times improvement in energy efficiency. In the round configuration, hydroslats can get 48 rows per light fixture, or 39 more rows per unit of energy. That's a 16 times improvement. Now, perhaps those were a bunch of semi-meaningless numbers. So let's shift gears and I'll tell you what they mean and why they matter. Next slide. There are several facts that are pertinent to what we are about to discuss. First, everyone eats food or they die. Our climate is rapidly changing, the Arctic more rapidly than most. Alaskans, mostly on the road system, eat about 9,000 heads of lettuce per day and import more than 95% of everything we consume. Global agriculture currently uses 70% of all the fresh water on the planet, and it also is responsible for 70% of the water pollution. By 2050, just 30 years from now, the Earth's population is projected to be 9.9 billion people. A 70% increase in the amount of food we produce will be required to feed that many people. That's impossible with our current agriculture. 96% of all the salad crops consumed in the US are grown in Southern California, Arizona, and Northern Mexico. Coincidentally, these are the places most dramatically impacted by the West's ongoing drought, which researchers have just labeled the worst in 1,200 years, and which is forecast to only intensify over the next 20 years. Hydroslats can completely eliminate that supply chain constraint. Slide. Every day that we delay adapting to these changes, Alaska becomes less sustainable. Slide. Hydroponics and controlled environment agriculture is not new technology, but it is significantly underdeveloped. Compared to field-grown crops, it uses up to 95% less water while producing more than 30 times more food per acre. It allows important crops to be grown in the Arctic that are otherwise unavailable. It's a key tool to help us solve our looming global food dilemma. After years of experimentation and prototyping, Hydroslats is a recently patented hydroponic CEA system with multiple scalable, automatable configurations, which provide several distinct advantages over other systems. Next slide. Over the next year, I have a goal of raising $275,000 to help me bring this innovation to the Arctic and to the rest of the world. With that money, I can build a pilot project facility with which to attract sufficient investment to help me reach my ultimate objective. And my objective, slide, is to start to feed the world one salad at a time, or maybe a few thousand salads at a time. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecil. We will begin judges' questions, starting with Melanie.
Thank you, Cecil, for this great presentation. That punchline at the end always gets me. So thank you for working on this and presenting this evening. I'm curious to hear more about the hydroponic landscape in Alaska as it is today. There are some hydroponic farms, there are some solutions, but you've come up with your own better way of doing this. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, there are some smaller hydroponic facilities that are using technology that's 10 to 12 years old, really. And as I said in the presentation, people just have never, to my knowledge, have never thought to get rid of those tubes. Most of the big hydroponic, at least vertical hydroponic facilities, they waste a tremendous amount of space simply because of the physical characteristics of the tubes that they use.
And are there a lot of hydroponic farms in Alaska as it is?
There
Is
are
it mostly small folks?
I'm only aware of 3 that are growing salad type crops. And none of those are particularly large, But like I said, we eat about 9,000 heads of lettuce a day in Alaska, and they're probably doing less than 4 or 5% of that need.
Thank you.
Am I up? So thank you very much. I think that was that was a great presentation, and it seems like you're kind of coming at this from a different angle, and I think that's really neat. I think two related questions that I have. So my understanding is that hydroslats makes a more efficient use of the space for a hydroponic operation. And obviously, if you can make better use of space, you can be more energy efficient from an electricity standpoint. But if you're increasing the number of crops that you're growing in the same square footage, do your water use, does your water use go up per square foot? Does it require the same amount of water, or is there a water efficiency improvement also?
So any plant is going to require X amount of liquid. So your water per square foot is going to go up to accommodate however many more plants you have in that space. But it's not going to be any greater amount of water than it would be in a system to grow the plant if they were separated.
Sure.
More.
And then I guess related to that is, if you're, I don't want to say order of magnitude, but if you're substantially increasing the crops per square foot, is there a limiting factor as far as harvesting it? I mean, if we go to increase by 10 times or whatever it is, the number of heads of lettuce in this facility, does it become problematic?
So and it would take a while to explain the two different configurations, but I showed you one in the illustration that was a flat array and one that was round, circular. In the flat arrays, if you can picture a curtain like in an ER in a hospital, if all of those arrays are hanging from something that's movable, each one of those flat arrays, as the plants grow and become larger, that expansion, that space can increase. That's when you're going to need more lights. But for the first 3 weeks of a plant's life, you can have dozens of plants in a very small space under one light, and tubes don't allow you to do that. And then they can be spread apart as they grow and need more space.
Thank you. I want to leave room for the last judge.
Thank you. So in your slide where you showed the tubes horizontal, it was very clear to me how the plant grows there, because it's got some volume that you can put soil in. On a slat, where is the soil?
There is no soil.
No soil. Okay.
It's completely soilless.
Okay.
That's the other advantage.
So how is the slat used? Is it just something that the plant attaches to?
So the slat really is only a constraint. So the plant grows in between two slats.
Okay.
And the fluid flows, the fertigation fluid flows between those slats. And there's also a material that I use in there, a special wicking material. And that's what the plant's roots will attach to that. And there's a design in the slat that keeps the plant in its place. And those spaces can be variable depending on what kind of crop you're growing in the slat too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, judges and Cecil. We will now step over to our next presentation by Stephen Bone with Crimson Medical Solutions. And in the chat will be the next round of judges, starting with John, Jim, and Reggie. All right, Stephen, can you see your slides? Stephen?
All right, let's do it. Hi, I'm Stephen Bone, CEO and co-founder of Crimson Medical Solutions, which is a nursing-focused healthcare innovation company, which means that we not only focus on patient safety and reducing costs for hospitals, but also improving the working lives for nurses. We started this company because we all have close connections to nurses and know their need for improved working conditions. Next slide, please. The problem we're addressing is medication errors that happen on IV lines. Medication errors are any errors that take place during drug administration, and it's estimated that 400,000 annual US patient deaths happen because of medication errors, and 28,000 of those are associated with IV lines. These happen because nurses don't have the tools they need to create a safe environment, and they usually have to MacGyver organization solutions. Next slide, please. Our solution is the IV Manager, which is essentially Legos for IV lines. The IV Manager color codes and connects together to create a safer environment for nurses to work with high-risk medications and reduce medication errors. The color coding distinguishes lines, the connecting reduces tangling, and the labeling is important for identification. Next slide, please. This is what the landscape looks like for IV line organization devices. In the bottom left, you have grouping devices that add a safety feature, but they don't get used because they add in steps to nurses' workflows. And when we go into facilities, these are usually seen in just the storage rooms. On the bottom right, you have tape and labels, which are what nurses use to MacGyver solutions, and they don't add enough safety features to reduce medication errors. The IV Manager fits into nurses' workflows like tapes and labels, but adds several benefits for organization to reduce medication errors. Next slide, please. This is our team. I'm on full-time, and we have an amazing part-time team and advisory board with experience in law, financial planning, hospital administration, medical device sales, and nursing. Next slide, please. We've made a lot of pre-revenue progress, bringing in $80,000 from awards and programs and receiving a utility patent for the IV Manager. We've also set up several free trials at hospitals for product development where the nurses have said that they have felt less susceptible to IV line errors, and it would be most appropriate in critical care settings where they're using 3 or more IV lines very often. Next slide, please. To go to market, we're doing direct sales and partnering with specialty distributors to assist us to navigate the complicated purchasing environment at hospitals. The first specialty distributor that we're partnering with is based in the Pacific Northwest and has a specialty sales team with relationships for hospitals in the area that specifically focus on infusion or IV line type products. They were excited to bring us on after showing their products to a few customers, and we recently brought them on. They've already gotten a few good conversations and managers interested in the product. To get the product adopted, the department directors for critical care units are the decision makers to get a trial going at a hospital. If the trial goes well and the nurses as the users like using the products, it's brought to a value analysis committee where policymakers and financial administrators, along with other practitioners, make the decision to implement the new product at the hospital. Once we have success for our first few customers in the Pacific Northwest, we're expanding our distribution into the rest of the US. Next slide, please. Our current operations are pretty straightforward. We have a contract manufacturer that produces our product under FDA registration. It's then shipped to CoMedical, who distributes our product and helps with our relationships with those hospitals. And we currently have a bridge mold, which gives us a 15% margin to set up our first few sales. And we have all the details worked out to get a loan to upscale our manufacturing to a 65% margin after our first sales. Next slide, please. We have a serviceable obtainable market of $240 million when servicing all IV lines placed in critical care units in the US, and we expect to capture $3.7 million of that market in the first 5 years, working with our US distributor market and setting up our direct sales infrastructure. Next slide, please. With the money from AIC, we would use it to bring on a nurse to the management team who has had experience in critical care and seen medication errors happen, and to set up our next distributor in the US. Thank you for your time. I'll answer any questions.
Well, we'll get right into questions, starting with John.
Yeah, sorry. Phone. I was using a different camera there. So this seems like a really fascinating idea. The products that you showed that looked overly complicated that people didn't want to use, are those sort of the industry leaders in this technology or this space? Or, I mean, is that representative of what's out there, or did you guys pick the ones that look the worst? By comparison, I guess is the question.
So there's not a lot out there. There's not anything that's widely adopted at a lot of hospitals from what we've seen, and the distributors that we're talking to that cover several different areas of states. So there hasn't been a IV line organization product that's been widely adopted in the market.
Excellent. And one last question. So you have a utility patent on this. You have the mold sort of set up. You're just scaling up at this point. So you have the protection for this product. If you decide to go forward and roll it out, there's not a lot of chance of you guys getting undercut by people coming out with, you call it the Lego system, the Duplo system or something like that. That's similar, but not quite the same.
Yep, we have protection.
Excellent. Well, this is great. This seems like a really cool product. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
There we go. All righty, unmuted. Sorry about that. So, hey, a couple questions. One, is this something that's disposable, like it's a one-time use and then they chuck them type deal, or is this something that you think they're going to clean and try and reuse?
There's problems with reusable products in the healthcare space for causing infections. So for multiple reasons, they are disposable. We make them in a recyclable way. So if the hospital has a recycling program, they can put those into that. But it's much easier for nurses to, put them on like labels and then throw them away for workflow purposes.
Okay. And then just a second quick question on that too, then what do these usually cost like for each one of them? And then they're color coded. So obviously we saw 3 colors. Are there like 10 colors to handle that thing you just showed, or how does that work?
So there are 6 colors, and they are colorblind friendly in how they're produced and their shades. And that can cover very large systems of IV lines. Did I miss one of your questions?
Sorry, I don't want to get into Reggie's stuff, but I guess just cost per unit. I mean, are they like $1 a piece, 50 cents a piece, or are we looking at $10 a piece and maybe they got a problem with that?
So we're doing a study to show the reduction of medication errors that we can do, because they're extremely costly to hospitals. The average hospital is spending $3 million in operational costs. And then that's not even including lawsuits from sentinel events, deaths in hospitals. So we're charging $3 per unit, which for a 20-bed critical care unit is $20,000, which comes in about the price of a premium supply for a hospital.
You good, Jim? All right. So, Stephen, so you had some trials out there. Tell me about feedback and suggestions that were given to you that helped you improve the product. Like, how has it changed or evolved?
Well, yeah, the first product we brought into the first hospital you did, the feedback we got, we were a little embarrassed, right? It was just kind of packaged oddly with, some tape on the box and stuff like that. So it helps with making our packaging more presentable and more workflow based. And then, developing the products from having like color coded labels to instead the physical piece being color coded and then the label being white. So product development for that. And then we actually had a trial at a smaller hospital that they didn't end up implementing, but it was because they didn't use the product enough, because they only see a patient with 3 or more IV lines once every 2 weeks. So and they're all about creating a standard of care. But they were like, this would be great in ICU, and they're introducing us to some larger hospitals in that area where they think department directors would be really interested.
Nice. And then real quick, I saw there were on the IV lines, there were like 3 different things. There was the tag that you could write on, and then there was something a little smaller, and then there was a little square block. What are the 3 different things? I understood the tag, and it looked like the tags even then hooked to each other after it was clipped on the line. What are the other units?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. They just clip right together like Legos. and that's to reduce tangling. But the largest piece is labeled. It goes up near the bag, has the label, the color coding, and the connecting to be able to keep them in succinct. You have a middle piece that does connecting and color coding that you can put, right near the bedside, but not in the bed, near the bed with the patient, so that you can keep it still organized down to the bedside. And then the last piece is a small piece that just does color coding, where you could put near Y sites where the IV lines combine, or access points. So, and that's to eliminate tracing from the top and the bottom of the line for better organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen and judges. Real quick, before we move on to our next presentation, I would like to take a moment to highlight our second set of kickers. The sustainability kicker is sponsored by the Educational Legacy Fund, and it recognizes an innovation that encourages or supports sustainability. Innovation in sustainability allows us to thrive now and be resilient in the face of a changing future. The final kicker is sponsored by a new donor, NSF Alaska EPSCoR. The climate adaptation kicker is awarded to the submission that best prepares for or adjusts to current or expected climate change and its effects, thereby reducing harm or taking advantage of new opportunities. All right, and our last presenter for this evening is William Evans, showcasing the fire charger. Reminder, judges, your order will be Kathleen, Melanie, and Justin. All right, William, take the stage whenever you're ready.
All right, thanks a lot. So good evening, everyone. My name is William Evans, but most folks actually call me Dub, short for the W on William. I'm speaking to you here from the ancestral lands of the Otna people in Kenny Lake, Alaska. Tonight, I'd like to talk to you about the fire charger. But before I get into that, I'd like to express my gratitude to all the folks associated with this competition. This is a phenomenal opportunity, and all the communication and guidance so far has just been outstanding. So thanks, everybody. Next slide, please. The fire charger is a niche industry cell phone and device charging adapter for wildland firefighters. Having been a wildland firefighter myself for almost 2 decades, I've spent a lot of time in the field, often for days or weeks at a time. And I can tell you that having a reliable way to charge your cell phone in the modern fire environment is just crucial. This charger adapts to the battery packs designed for the Bendix King P150 handheld radio. It's a handheld radio that most wildland firefighters now carry every day and use in the field. You may have seen similar products to this in other industries, and this product itself is an update of a concept from an older radio design that we used to use a decade and a half ago. But the focus of this project has been to find the simplest and lightest solution for firefighters that already have so much gear that they have to carry all day, every day. Next slide, please. So as powerful as our cell phones and tablets have become, there will always be a need for women and men to perform the dangerous work required on a multitude of incident types, whether it's a wildfire or something completely different. Landslide, earthquake, search and rescue, hurricane, any of that. So any advantage that we can give ourselves in the field is very valuable. So while the fire charger is not the only tool in a first responder's toolbox, and sometimes may not even be the best tool, is one more gadget that will help those on the front lines be successful and keep them safe. So we use, cell phones out there all the time. Our communication is critical for all kinds of different stuff. So next slide, please. So over the years that I've been plugging away at this project, I've learned a ton of new skills. I went into this with virtually no experience in design, manufacturing, sales, web design, none of that stuff. And it's primarily been a hobby and a passion project. The pursuit of profit has always been kind of on the back burner, while being able to deliver a useful tool has been my mission one. It'd be nice to break even on this someday, but if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So far, my milestones, I came up with this idea back in 2014 as I was working managing a helicopter for some smoke jumpers in Washington. And I've just worked my way through researching in 2015, 2016, started 3D printing in 2017, 2018, started cranking out small batches of them to just hand out on fires for free. 2019, got better circuit boards, outsourced that. 2020, tried to do some injection molding. COVID shut that down. 2021, installed a solar-powered 3D printer farm in my cabin, and that's what I've been doing since. Next slide, please. So on the left here, you can see my small 3D printer farm. This is where I've been producing my products so far, being powered at this point solely with the 2 solar panels you see there on the right. All of these are being assembled and built right at my kitchen table and shipped and sold. What's next? Next slide, please. So I've got some social media stuff I'm going to do this spring, adding a little bit to the website for some improvement, and then showing them on fires this summer. And hopefully in the future, move to injection molding to really mass produce things and maybe improve some of the design and go from there. All right,
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, William. We'll get started with judges' questions, beginning with Kathleen.
Well, thank you. This is very interesting. So the point, what I'm understanding is that, there's other things that you could carry as a pack to charge your cell phone. What you're doing is trying to decrease weight that the firefighters carry, and they've got this one radio battery that they can be used for 2 purposes, for the radio and then to charge other devices.
Absolutely. Most of us are carrying around multiple lithium-ion batteries that
Sure.
go on our radios. And we've also got what we call clamshells. These go on the radios, but they also take AA batteries, which, we get shipped to us in the field. And these work fine with the charger as well.
So, you're making and selling these right now?
That's correct. Yeah. Sold one from an online order this morning. Last week, I shipped 7 to the Flathead Hot Shots in Montana.
All right. And so the idea, so firefighters, I can't believe you can use cell service a lot of times where there's fire, where you're fighting fires, maybe. So I'm wondering, is it really, do you use your cell phone more for just documentation and trying to understand maybe communication, written communication? I'm struggling a little bit on really where you burn your battery in a fire. I don't mean to use that literally.
Sure, that's great. We use them for mapping. They've got GPS chipsets in them nowadays. Using them for reference material. Using them for making cell phone calls on wildfires. We bring in what are called cows, cell tower on wheels. And
okay, got it.
Yeah, they'll park those way up in the backcountry, like on roads. But
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks,
Melanie. Go ahead.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Deb, as well, for a great presentation. Given that you also have the ability to charge just regular cell phones from it, do you see perhaps expanding into that market? There are so many portable device chargers, but it might be a bigger market than firefighters and those radios.
It might be, but there are so many companies making so many different devices of that nature. Like, I don't know, like I'm trying to do this one thing and do it somewhat well. And other than that, I've got my day job. Fire season is about here, and that's where I spend the majority of my time and energy.
Gotcha, makes sense. And is there something about the fire charger that is more fireproof, or what is it more heat resistant than other options?
If you're carrying this around and it's clipped to your belt or in your pack, and you've got to worry about this catching on fire, getting burned, you've probably got bigger issues than worrying about this. So it's not. It's plastic. It's a PETG plastic, so recyclable if it ever breaks or anything. But yeah, that's not so much the goal of it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you,
Over to
Melanie.
Justin.
Well, I would say I very much appreciate your day job. So thank you very much. So my understanding is that you're using existing batteries with this, or have you created a new battery that goes with it?
No, these are existing batteries. These are very awesome batteries that these typically click onto and power our handheld radios in the field. They're very well constructed, very expensive batteries that most employers, whether they're a state government or federal government, they're issuing these to their personnel. So the firefighters typically don't have to buy what is like a $240, $260 battery, but these things are phenomenal for your radio and this purpose.
So I think that answers my other question, which was, if you're using these existing batteries, this is not a one-use item. Like when you're done in the field, you can take this back and plug it in and recharge it. So it's not like it's like you're getting rid of it when you're done.
Oh, absolutely not. We've all got at our stations, in our engines, we've got banks that of chargers that we just drop these in and pick it back out when it's full, and yeah, roll with it.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Well, thank you, judges and William, and overall our competitors in general. Since that was our last presentation, this is nearly the end of the night. It is truly a big deal to make it into the AIC semifinals, and we really appreciate all of the hard work and creativity you put into your ideas, plus all of the amazing presentations. I love the graphics and all of the slides that I saw, so good job. Judges, we will now start doing the open Q&A session. We will start with any questions you may have regarding the airborne disease dosimeter, and just simply raise your hand and I'll call on you to try to avoid any Zoom overtalk. Yeah, Justin.
So for the airborne disease dosimeter, I guess one of the questions that I had is, have you examined maybe some of the potential legal concerns or privacy concerns with maybe the sharing side of it? You mentioned it as like a Yelp for indoor air quality, but if the person isn't using it right, or they have it in their purse or their backpack or something like that, and can that affect the readings? And then what recourse would a business have if there's a bad reading on a website now that for something that they don't know about or we're not involved in?
Okay, so I think there's a couple questions there. One is the recourse question. The other is essentially a privacy question.
Yes, the privacy, I guess I was thinking more about the GPS and if there was tracking, or if you can turn that off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally you wouldn't turn it off, because of course that's a valuable part of the whole program, is to have a georeferenced sensor reading. That said, we would anonymize the data so that nobody else would know where it came from or who had provided it. That's why I think that's your opt-out point right there, right? Your opt-out point is to say, I don't want anybody to know that I got one of these things, as opposed to, I don't want the location where I took this reading to be known. But that said, it's a great question. I think there's some meaty privacy implications around that. So, need to be cognizant of that. Last thing you want to do is have an Apple AirTag kind of thing going on where people being stalked or whatever, So we're certainly cognizant of that potential issue. And as for the second point, I got into the first one too much. The second point is privacy versus.
The second one was you mentioned it as a Yelp for indoor air.
Oh yeah.
Yelp, I mean, theoretically anyway, if someone is treating their customers poorly and they get a poor rating, that's how it's supposed to work. But in this case, they're not really doing anything. They're just running their business, and they might not even know this person has this device on them.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's an issue with any crowdsourced solution is that you can have potentially bad actors, right? So there needs to be a process to be able to remove those in the event that it's contested. In the ideal solution set, a business would in fact upload their own meetings, right? And that's really where we want this to go, sort of as social engineering via capitalism, is to say, look, it's a way to incentivize good behavior and to bring customers in to show that you have good air quality, as opposed to relying on Joe Random to walk in and grab a reading out of your establishment.
Cool. Thank you.
All right, team, your next question will come from Kathleen.
I have a question. So what I understand is you have a certain amount of CO2 in a space, and then you use a calculation on the amount of infection in the area to calculate your risk. So my thought is like, well, if I'm in a confined area like an airplane where I have a variety of people from a lot of different, or let's say I go to a concert, an indoor concert, how do you even run that number where you've got people coming from all over a variety of areas?
Max, do you want to hit that one? Whoop, no can hear.
Test 1 2 3. Awesome, great. So we are definitely looking at community spread by area right now. You bring up a great point, and one of the things that we have been looking at doing is setting up kind of like an optional calculator setting for the application where you could adjust the community spread. So with that potential calculator setting, you might be able to adjust it to some kind of averaged value. But that's a great question, and thank you for posing that.
And we could rant about airplanes, because airplanes are an interesting edge case where they have such a filtration, and that lowers your overall concentration of aerosols, but not your overall concentration of CO2. So you tend to get these false positives out of our system, because it would say, hey, you got a lot of CO2 in here. It's got to be dangerous. But the airlines are filtering out the aerosols. That said, talk to Alaska Airlines about hooking your jet up to the jetway air instead of letting it sit on the ramp for 45 minutes like they do right now without plugging it into external air, because that is where your hazard point is, for what it's worth.
All right, thank you, team. It looks like we don't have any more questions for you. So we're going to move on to Ultropia. Do any judges have any questions for Cody and Amy? Might take a moment to gather your thoughts. Going once, going twice. All right, well, I guess they had some pretty thorough presentation and question answering then. It looks like we'll move on to hydroslats with Cecil. Oh, yes, Kathleen.
So Cecil, I see you're advocating, more plants per square foot, but then that just raises in my mind the idea that viruses and pests control in a space where there's just more organic matter, maybe less airflow. Is there accommodation there for that, or?
So there would still be as much airflow. That's one of the really significant management things in a greenhouse or in a grow room like that. The other thing is that you can actually have clean room sort of filtration for air. You can have an environment where it's completely enclosed, where it's like a chip manufacturing facility where people have to come in and out through airlocks. You can virtually eliminate pathogens that otherwise would be a problem in external environments in a contained growing space like that. But you're completely correct. Anytime you have organisms in a greater concentration, you have potential for more problems. But I think they're completely manageable.
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Looks like we're ready for your question, Jack.
Yeah, so what is it that you're patenting?
The patent covers the concept of having a rigid static surface with a dynamic surface and plants being grown in between that. And I can send you diagrams, but that's effectively the concept in the patent. And there are several configurations where I can make those static parts in different shapes and then have the dynamic piece that fits against them to grow between. And it's the round configurations. I don't know if you remember from the drawing, but the round configurations are where the real significant energy savings is, because I can bring the plants to the photons in a single light source, where that can't really be done in any other system.
So, and have you actually been awarded a patent, or are you applying for a patent? You've awarded a patent?
Been awarded a patent, yes.
And so I understand the patent about the two surfaces, static, moving surface, being in close proximity to each other, that sort of thing. But the round arrangement, that you got so much more use of the space out of, or with light efficiency, is that part of the patent?
Yes.
Really? Okay.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecil. We'll move on to, do you have a quick question, Reggie? Oh, okay.
I just like hitting the button. No, I was going to, but you can move on. It's fine.
Okay, so sorry about that. We will move on to Crimson Medical Solutions with Stephen. Any questions for Stephen? Looks like Kathleen and then maybe Melanie, if that was yep, perfect. Kathleen.
So I appreciate this presentation, and it seems like the real challenge here is to get it into the hospitals, to get the hospitals to buy in that this is good, that it doesn't. So it's like, it seems like almost a PR, how to sell this to hospitals, how to get that through their approval boards.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem we're facing right now is just, so, I mean, the biggest thing that people want to see for our company is like market risk. We were talking to a larger medical device company that like, they kind of looked at this and what they'd seen in the market was that it's they were like, so far we've seen that it's a nice to have, not a need to have. So we're right now proven that it's a need to have rather than a nice to have to reduce medication errors. And I think a study is going to be a really important part about that. And we have a pathway to that of having a professor partner with us to work with us to get a grant to get a simulation study done to show that we reduce medication errors. And yeah, I mean, we're really early. I'm early green entrepreneur, so learning about the purchasing environment in hospitals is really interesting. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, next will be Melanie, followed by Justin.
Thank you, Stephen. I think it's probably a dovetail to what you were just mentioning. I saw on one of your slides you mentioned co-medical and was looking them up after your presentation. Is that who you're planning on bringing in to get into the hospitals, or what role do they play? Are they licensing?
Yeah, so co-medical is a specialty dealer. And so they distribute the product and they have a small portfolio of products, and they like bringing new products into the market. And they have a team dedicated to infusion-based products. So they currently, and we set up a strategic partnership that was signed as of February, early February. And so they're out talking to hospitals, and we're learning new information day by day. We have a few department directors of some larger hospitals that are interested, which is the first step of getting a trial going and getting through a value analysis committee. So their role is very important in helping us navigate the purchasing at hospitals, since they have those pre-existing relationships and they sell into the hospitals in the area while we're still doing direct sales and getting leads. So partnership in that way.
All right, I think we're ready for your question, Justin.
So I have a question about the colors. You mentioned that there were 6 different colors. Are they intended to color code specific drug types, or is it more it gets put on when the bottle goes on, like, okay, this one's the red one kind of thing?
Good question. And that's actually something that we are tackling right now with we're looking to bring on a nurse that has been in the critical care setting and has more expertise than us on medications. I mean, it's a gap in experience that we have right now. But we're fiddling with the idea of bringing intention into the colors. Right now it's ambiguous because we've assumed that hospital systems either have have some meaning for colors, or that it might mess with it. And so we're trying to make a system for the colors that wouldn't clash with any existing systems at hospitals. But as of right now, it's ambiguous and purely meant for distinguishing lines. That being said, some of the nurses that we've talked to have been like, oh, it'd be great. I can use the red for high risk medication. So that's some information around the question. We don't have right now we're marking it as ambiguous, but we're looking into having meaning around the colors.
So I think that kind of leads into my second question, which was, if there's no specific system or classification to the colors, is there something that have you guys considered maybe looking at this with packaging manufacturers? Like, is there a reason this just couldn't come on the bottle when it comes out of the box or the bag or whatever it is, to where nobody has to do anything?
I think that would be great. I mean, I think this would be a valuable addition onto your basic IV lines to make sure that all medications are safer. I think that's a really good idea, and would be worth exploring.
Thank you.
Perfect. Next, we'll move on to the fire charger. I'm sure y'all have taken such great and thorough notes. So we'll start with Reggie.
Figure I better get one question in. So Dub, I like it. I think it's a great idea. 2 things that I see is it's got to be tough, right? You're using it in the fire service field. And so going to injection molded instead of 3D printed, I think is a really good idea. The other thing I noticed was you're still using USB-A, and that's a large connector. Have you considered going to USB-C and just making it that much smaller, the unit itself, like where that connection is?
Absolutely. To the point of 3D printing versus injection molding, absolutely. There's a whole range of plastics, and, just not getting those layer lines that an FDM printer is going to leave. As far as switching over to, newer standards of USB, absolutely. And I've kind of been watching the market just to see when kind of that shift goes that direction, and maybe redesigning the circuit board at some point, getting some of each for a while until the final shift would be over to a newer standard. But yeah, it's definitely on my radar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reggie.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like that's through all the questions. So thank you once again, competitors. So now everyone has heard from our first 5 competitors. Make sure to tune in tomorrow evening at the same time, same place for the remaining 5 presentations. And don't forget to cast your fan favorite vote on the AIC website, which closes at midnight on Thursday. But wait, who wants a fun and sunny vacation? During the awards ceremony, not only will winners be announced, but there will also be a giveaway to one audience member for 2 round trip tickets anywhere Alaska Airlines flies. More information and method of entry will be announced during the ceremony starting at 1 p.m. Saturday. On that note, I believe we're finished up for the night, so have a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Recording stopped.
Hello.